They took my keys when I moved out, so I changed something they never imagined I would touch. It wasn't a fight. There was no yelling. Just a silent moment where my mother extended her hand and said, "You won't be needing this anymore." In her palm was the house key I had carried for 15 years. I placed it there like I was returning a badge. No thank you. No goodbye hug. Just a slow turn of her wrist, slipping the key into her coat pocket like I had been dismissed from a company I never really belonged to. I had helped them plan that house's trust, built the estate documents, coordinated the deed transfers, insurance, even the medical directives. I knew the system better than they did, but somehow, that key still felt like the last thread keeping me tethered to something that was never mine. I had just bought my own place, not flashy, just quiet, safe, mine. I thought maybe they'd be proud. Instead, they made it clear I was no longer in. They raised me to take care of everything, then cut me out of the home I helped protect. A week later, I saw a Facebook photo of my sister Clara at brunch in the house, my old room redecorated. Her caption, finally taking over the Harper Castle she had moved back in. No one told me. It wasn't just that I was replaced, it was how seamless it felt to them. As if I had never existed between those walls. My dad sent me a casual email. Hope you're settling in, if you have time. We need to review some updates to the estate docs. Your mom thinks Clara should be co-executor. I read the sentence. 5 times co-executor. Clara couldn't even file her own taxes without texting me 10 times. But now, she was stepping into roles I had carried alone for years without hesitation, without qualification, and without me. They didn't even hide the favoritism anymore. They called it fairness. I opened my fireproof safe and pulled out the old printed will, the one I helped revise in law school. I had made notes on it back then, little suggestions in pencil, marked with care and pride. I wanted to show them I was worthy back then. That still mattered to me. Now, all I saw were erasures, places I had made space for them, places they were now filling with someone else. I stared at the line, "To our daughter Maya, for her loyalty and stewardship." I had memorized that phrase once, but now, the word loyalty felt like a leash, and that was when I knew they thought they had locked me out, but I had held the blueprint all along. Growing up, our house looked like a magazine, not because we were rich but because my mother curated everything to look effortless, clean, perfect, even her daughters. I was the neat one. Clara was the charming one. Guess which one got more praise? My father always called me his little helper. I thought it was affection, until I realized it meant I was expected to handle things. Clara, on the other hand, got to be the wild one, the creative spirit. When she wrecked her car, I was the one who called the insurance and negotiated the claim. When I was 16, I started drafting contracts for fun. My mother loved telling her friends I was so mature, but never once told me I looked beautiful. Clara could stumble through a semester of community college and still get a standing ovation for showing up. I got into law school on a partial scholarship. My dad said, "That's nice, but don't let it make you cold." Clara got an unpaid art internship and they threw her a going-away dinner. I wasn't the favorite. I was the fallback. Whenever Clara messed up, it was always, "She's still learning." But when I slipped even a little, it became a referendum on my attitude, my tone, my choices. I learned early to clean up after others and smile while doing it. I handled mom's healthcare paperwork at 22, updated their living wills, took charge of refinancing the house when dad got laid off. Clara? She showed up late to family dinners and still left with leftovers packed just for her. I moved back in briefly after college to save money, paid rent, did laundry, took care of errands. Mom never called it my home. She called it the arrangement. Clara moved in 5 different times for free. Each time was met with, "She just needs a soft place to land." The last time I tried to confront the imbalance, Mom said, "We love you both equally. You just handle more because you're better at it." As if competence was a punishment I earned. Being the strong one doesn't mean you're seen. It means you're useful. I thought that once I owned my own place, things would shift. That maybe distance would create respect, but it didn't. It only made it easier for them to forget I existed. So when they asked me to help update their estate, I should have seen it coming. The setup, the quiet transfer of legacy from me to Clara. The reward for loyalty going to the one who never earned it. But this time, I didn't just hold their documents, I read every clause with new eyes. The first red flag wasn't the estate request, it was how they phrased it. Mom said, "Since you know all the legal stuff, we figured you'd be fine updating the documents." Not asking, just assuming. Like my time was theirs when I asked why Clara needed to be added as co-executor. Mom replied, "She's maturing, we want her to feel included." I wanted to laugh. Clara couldn't spell executor last year without autocorrect. Dad just nodded through it. "You'll still be the primary," he said, as if that was supposed to soften the blow. As if splitting something I built with someone who never showed up was fairness, not favoritism. They wanted me to do the work and let Clara wear the title. When I emailed a revised draft and asked for feedback, no one replied. A week later, Clara posted a selfie in their kitchen with the caption, "Helping the rents with all the grown-up stuff. So proud to be trusted." She didn't even open the PDF I sent. I knew because I monitored the metadata. Mom called to say, "She's just excited. Don't be so sensitive." That was her phrase whenever I stood up for myself. Not "you're right," just "you're sensitive." I realized I was no longer seen as the daughter. They saw me as their paralegal, a resource, a function, not someone with feelings. It got worse when I found out Clara had been named on the medical directive, not me. Clara, the same person who once listed crystals and green juice as her wellness plan. They gave her control of their life but never trusted me with their love. I sat with the documents, reading line after line I had once drafted. There it was, my original phrasing still intact, my name still listed, but now with an asterisk beside it. Contingent upon availability, contingent like I was an option, like after all these years, my presence still required permission. The irony, they never even asked Clara to help draft it. They had me do all the legal prep. While quietly shifting the power to her, they used my skills to write me out. So I printed the full draft, highlighted every line I had written, then circled one sentence at the end. "This document may be amended with unanimous agreement from both executors." I stared at that clause for a long time. Then I started rewriting it, just not in the way they expected. The betrayal came with cake and champagne. It was a surprise dinner for Clara's new responsibilities. I wasn't invited. I only found out because an old neighbor posted photos on Facebook. There she was, Clara, standing in my parents' living room, holding a framed copy of the revised estate summary, the one I drafted. In the background, balloons, wine glasses, Mom beaming with pride. The caption read, "So proud of Clara stepping into her legacy." Legacy, a word I once held like a gift, now tossed around like a party favor. They celebrated her with my words, my work, my silence. I texted Mom, didn't know there was a celebration. She replied, "It was last minute." Clara deserved a little acknowledgement, like I never had, like acknowledgement was a gift they only gave the one who needed less to earn it. I sat on my kitchen floor, scrolling through the pictures I spotted. The revised clause clear as day in the frame Clara held, the one I had modified. My own hands had drafted the lines they now used to prop her up. Dad didn't message. No one did. The same people who relied on my expertise for years couldn't bother to say thank you or invite me to the table I once managed. The final blow came in a group email. Subject line, "Executor account access. Please confirm." Clara was listed as primary. I was now the alternate. After years of being the backbone, they made me a backup. I didn't cry. Not then. I printed the email and folded it slowly. Placed it next to the photo of the first estate draft I had ever done, one where I was listed first, alone with the words, "For her trustworthiness." Apparently, trust was replaceable. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying every time I had said yes, every time I had solved, explained, protected. It wasn't love, it was leverage. And when I stopped being convenient, they rewrote the story without me. But they forgot one thing: I still held the original documents, and I still knew exactly where the real power lived. I didn't leave my apartment for 3 days. I kept the curtains drawn. Every time my phone lit up, I ignored it, even though I knew it was probably work or worse. Another family group email I was still accidentally copied into. I ate crackers for dinner, not because I didn't have food, because that's all I could make myself do. Grief isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's just the sound of yourself going numb. I opened the original estate draft and read it line by line, not for legal clarity but for validation, to remind myself I had mattered once, that somewhere, they had believed in me, or at least needed me enough to pretend. I wasn't mourning the role. I was mourning how little I meant once they didn't need it anymore. I stared at the line, in full recognition of Maya's lifelong loyalty. It read like a tombstone. I had buried myself under their approval for years, thinking one day they'd dig me out with Love. Instead, they sent party invites to my replacement. I remembered being 11 and making pretend wills on the kitchen table, dreaming of becoming a lawyer, imagining how I'd take care of them someday. I thought that was love. Now I saw it was training. I looked at the framed degree on my wall and almost hated it. That degree had become my golden leash, and then came the text from Clara. Hey, Mom said you're not mad, just overwhelmed. Let me know if you still want to help with the taxes though. Help? Still? As if nothing happened. As if betrayal was a mosquito bite and I was being dramatic for bleeding. I didn't answer. They didn't even give me the decency of losing me consciously. They just assumed I'd return out of habit. I took a long shower, let the water burn my skin just enough to feel alive again. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I opened a blank document, titled it, For Me. In it, I started to write not a legal draft, but a declaration, not for them, not for court. For my own clarity, the first line read, I revoke any and all permissions granted through guilt, obligation, or inherited silence. I printed that page and folded it inside the original will. And for the first time in years, I began to imagine a future without them in it. I started walking at night, no music, no phone, just the sound of my own breath in the dark. It was the first time I noticed how quiet the world could be when I wasn't trying to manage anyone else's no. I found a coffee shop near my apartment that didn't know my name, that felt safe. I'd sit in the corner with my laptop, not working, just being. The barista once said, "You look like someone who doesn't rush anymore." I smiled. She was right. One night, I reread the clause I had written in the estate draft, all changes require unanimous executor approval. It hit me. I was still on the document. Legally, logistically, silently, they had pushed me aside in public, but the paperwork still needed me. They celebrated Clara, but I was still the lock they couldn't pick. That realization didn't feel vindictive. It felt empowering, like I hadn't lost my position, I had simply stopped playing along. And now, I could rewrite the rules without asking permission. I started making a list of what I wanted in my life. Not goals, feelings. I wrote clarity, rest, honesty. Space where I don't have to explain my pain. It was the first to-do list. That made me breathe deeper, not tighter. I removed my family from my emergency contacts, changed passwords, not out of spite but to reflect reality if something happened to me. I didn't want them called out of obligation. I wanted someone who would show up because they loved me. I told my therapist, I'm not angry anymore. I'm awake. That week, I was offered a chance to teach a legal workshop for young women navigating family estate issues. I almost said no. Then I remembered that 11-year-old girl at the kitchen table. I said yes for her. At the workshop, one woman asked, how do you stay objective when the people you're protecting don't protect you back? I paused and said, you stop protecting the wrong people. They made me an executor, but I chose to become a liberator. I didn't return their calls, I didn't attend brunch, and I didn't explain why. My absence spoke more clearly than any confrontation could have. I updated the draft, left Clara's name, but added a clause one that required my sign-off for any final distribution. Then I filed the new version in the county office myself, quietly, legally, permanently. The next day, I bought a new file cabinet, labeled the top drawer, boundaries. Inside, I placed the original handwritten will from college alongside the printed revocation I had written in the shower. And just like that, I became the author of my own future. They didn't notice the change right away. That's how silent revenge works. It settles in the spaces they assume are still theirs, but the locks had shifted. The doors no longer opened. A month later, I got an email from my father. We need to move forward with the estate. Clara's ready to start the transition, as if I had agreed to step aside, as if silence meant surrender. I replied with one line, please refer to the updated draft filed under my signature. No greeting, no apology, just law. A day passed, then Mom called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I don't understand why you're doing this. You know Clara doesn't have your expertise. They always knew she couldn't do it. They just hoped I'd keep doing it for her. Ethan, our cousin who knew both sides, texted, they're panicking. Clara tried to call the office and was told she needs your approval to move forward. I smiled. Not because I wanted power, but because I finally used it for me. I sent a notarized letter outlining that no financial transfers or legal updates could be made without my co-signature. It was calm, direct, final. They called it cruel. I called it balance. I didn't remove them from the estate. I simply made sure my voice could no longer be erased. Clara messaged me, "This is just like you, making everything difficult." I didn't reply. She could choke on her own entitlement. They expected obedience. I delivered legality. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was dense, like oxygen reclaimed. I bought a safe. Not for valuables but for proof. I placed every signed document inside, along with a photo of myself in my first suit taken on the day I passed the bar. That girl, she never got a party, but she got justice. 1 week later, Mom sent a final email. "We'd like to go back to the original arrangement. Let's talk." I read it once, then archived it. I didn't need to reply. My name, inked into every legal line, was louder than any answer. And the estate, it now held one clause they never expected. In the event of executor dispute, Maya's authority is final. Peace didn't roar into my life, it arrived slowly, like sun through blinds after too many nights of no sleep. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still, and that stillness felt like oxygen. I started waking up without bracing for disappointment. I didn't check their emails anymore. I didn't rehearse conversations that would never come. I made coffee, sat in silence, and felt light. My legal work flourished, but more than that, I did. I started choosing clients who reminded me of myself, women who had been the backbone of broken system. As I helped them write new stories in legal language their families couldn't rewrite, I no longer needed to be the daughter they'd approve. I became the woman I needed to see. One client said, "Thank you for protecting me from the people who kept calling it love." I wanted to cry, not because of her words but because, for once, I wasn't the only one naming the truth. I hosted my own birthday brunch. Just 6 friends, one small toast, no performative speeches, no guilt. One friend raised her glass and said, "To Maya, whose silence is sharper than any signature." We all laughed. I kept that phrase in my journal. I visited my safe, opened it, looked at the framed photo of me in that suit. Next to it, I placed something new, the final version of the estate plan, my initials next to every clause. They tried to use against me. And beside it all, folded carefully, was the old will I wrote in college. The one with my handwritten note in the margin. "Maybe one day they'll see me." They never did. But I saw her, and that was enough. Forgiveness is just letting go of the hope they'll ever understand. I donated the anchor paperweight Dad once gave me, not out of anger, just release. It was heavy, and I didn't need to carry symbolism anymore. I had the real thing. Freedom. My home is quiet, my boundaries are loud, and the door, always locked from the inside with a key only I hold. I don't need their version of legacy. I wrote my own and I signed it in ink they can't erase. They took my keys when I moved out. So I rewrote the documents that kept them thinking I'd stay.